Hello everybody, it's Tommy and welcome back to another speed build for the Disney save. Today we're starting a brand new film for the save file in Portorosso, and that is Luca. This is a Disney Pixar film that came out, I think, straight to Disney Plus kind of during the height of the pandemic. So in my opinion, this movie falls really under the radar. Like, I never hear anybody talk about it. I don't really see any reference for it in the Disney parks, although recently I did see that they're starting to maybe integrate it into some of like their summer parades and things like that. But yeah, it's just one of those films that I personally love, and I was so inspired by it the very first time I saw it. Like, I remember seeing it and really thinking that it was going to make such fun builds and such fun characters to add to the save. It takes place in a little Italian town called Portorosso, and that meant that it was a perfect fit for this world. It was definitely one of the highest contenders for choices right off the bat, and it fits so well because there are quite a few locations that get shown, but they're somewhat diverse from one another. They live in this little coastal village area where a lot of the civilians rely on fishing and water activities, sort of for like economic purposes, but then it also has lots of little shops. It's got like little pizza stores, and it's got that small town community vibes, ice cream, gelato, and then you've got your main characters that are all supposed to be, I believe, in the younger-ish teen category. Although the way they're drawn and animated, I feel like I just got kid vibes from them. Like, they're very young teens. However, Disney Wiki specifically listed them off as being teenagers, so I think they're kind of in that transitional period between like turning 12 during the summer and being 13 when you start school. Gives kind of that sort of vibe, like very young teen. One of the first locations you do see in the film is a abandoned tower and lighthouse that Alberto lives in. He doesn't have any family. That I think he does have a dad, but the dad doesn't live with him anymore. The dad left, so he has no living family members immediately around him. He's sort of abandoned, and he makes this abandoned building his own. Now, he is like a sea creature character, but he lives primarily on land, and he has sort of repurposed this location to be his house. So I think obviously what I could have done when making this building is just have it be his home and have him live here. But then it became a little bit of a complication about like what ages we were going to do the characters in. Unfortunately, when it comes to the teen life state in The Sims 4, they look so close to young adults that it's almost like a really weird decision, because when the characters look like they're supposed to be children, but they have features and things about their storylines that start to lean a little bit more into older categories, it's kind of hard to place exactly where the life state would be. And when I was originally designing this place, I thought that I would make them children. So I was kind of thinking that I'd make this almost like a playground or a children's hangout spot, like have playground equipment and lots of children's activities, and then have it be a generic lot that children from the neighborhood could come and hang out here and play. But then I realized that in order for me to make them mermaids, unfortunately, as I really truly needed them to be, because it's so integral to the storyline, I had to make them teens. So immediately aging them up a little bit meant that I had to age up this location a little more. And it did mean that I could potentially have this be a residential, but ultimately I decided that we were still going to go with like the hangout, generic lot, playground vibe, but I would make it a little bit older presenting, or at least have some variety of activities that Sims can do here. So you can have children here, but you also probably could have some teens. Regardless of that, because Alberto lives here, the upstairs floor that he primarily lives on is designed to essentially be a house. So it has a lot of the features that you would need for functional living. It has like a little refrigerator, kitchen sort of area. It has a lot of decorations, toys, things for him to do. And it does have a hammock bed, which would be so nice if we could get something like that added to The Sims. I'm still kind of waiting, and it would be really great to add into here. But because I decided this wasn't going to be a residential, I did focus more on this being very hobby based and having lots of activities for Sims to do, and just kind of sprinkling in the variety between the ages of what is actually available here. But the top floor is essentially a replication of a lot of scenes that are shown in the film. So I was able to kind of like go around the circle and really place in a lot of the random decor items and things and match it up the best that I possibly can. They also utilize the roof space as a little seating area around a fireplace. So all of that is a basic recreation information from the film. The rest of the tower is supposed to be broken and abandoned, and I didn't want to like overutilize the space because there is 3 floors here, so I could have like fully decorated every single floor, but I felt like it wasn't true to like the abandoned vibes of it all. So instead I kind of gutted the second floor, cracked it open, had a lot of like random broken furniture using some of the werewolves pack, and that basement kit that has a lot of furniture that looks like it's either stored or kind of broken and old. And then the bottom floor, I decided I would make that a little bit more heavily like older teen vibes. It has a hidden doorway that you can get into from the back, and then it's got like a couch and a cooler. It's like if older teens were to find this place, like kind of how they would decorate it. And that's not shown in the film, but I just felt like it would be a better utilization of this space here. So the bottom floor and the tippy top floor are essentially the only actual spaces inside of the build that are functional. There was a spiral staircase in here as well that kind of goes around the top floor and presumably around the entire build, but we don't have that as usual, so I do have to utilize a ladder system to use the top floor, and it kind of makes the middle floor inaccessible. I hope that makes sense. Like, I didn't really want to connect everything and fully utilize this space because it just doesn't give abandoned. So instead, I've got a couple of ladders going for the top floor and the very bottom floor. Because this movie takes place in a coastal Italian town, there is a lot of nautical and fishing references. Obviously, the characters themselves are supposed to be sea creatures, so they are very fearful of certain things that would be relative to like fishing. Like harpoons are very much used as icons in the film that are kind of like scary to them, or fish hooks, those things, but still just generally having like a lot of the nautical pieces like netting, a lot of that cats and dogs stuff, and the debug nets and buoys and wall decor items. They were scattered everywhere in the film. You could see them all over the place in here. Lots of bottles, the Sulani items, some of the Tartosa like message in a bottle items, lots of that kind of stuff. So I wanted to make sure that I really overutilized that in this upstairs space, because despite it being abandoned and the bottom floors not really being utilized, he really over decorated this space up here. He seems to be a little bit of a collector, or he is somebody who like frequently goes back and forth between the water and the land. So he just seems to like find stuff or pick stuff up off the beach, and he has presumably brought it all into here. Some of it doesn't really make sense if you think about it and kind of look around. You're like, how would a kid get this giant couch or this giant chair all the way up into this tower like this? But Alberto definitely shows himself to be like somewhat creative and resourceful, and he also shows an interest in like mechanics and building, so I think he would kind of figure it out. There also is the possibility that this place just had some stuff laying around already ready to go, so when his father left him and he kind of needed to find a new space to be in, he found this place and it already had some of those essentials, and that's why he set up shop here. It's not really stated either way, that's just some of my lore, but when I was looking around at things, that was kind of like my thought, like how did this stuff even get here? I also was curious what this building even is really supposed to be. It doesn't have anything in it as far as I could see that would indicate that it's a lighthouse, but it is located on an island, and Disney Wiki referenced it as being a lighthouse as well. I'm not really sure where they got that information. Also, as a side note, something that I read on Disney Wiki that really blew my mind when I was kind of doing research for Luca, I was trying to figure out what time period this movie possibly takes place in so that I could kind of determine how many electronics and things, if there would be TVs around. I don't really see a lot of that as far as the characters in the film. Like it didn't quite distinguish maybe where we were in time. But Disney Wiki referenced that this movie takes place in the 1960s. I have no idea where they could have possibly gotten that information from, but I did kind of go off of that idea generally speaking, so I tried to limit some of the technology, but not in the same way as like when we're doing Beauty and the Beast or those really older style movies or Little Mermaid and things like that. We can get away with some technology from the 60s, obviously. So I was okay with little things here and there, like the typewriter computer that I think Sims, like especially teens, would love to be able to sit and play a game. Not doing the full-blown modern looking computer and monitor, but we can do the computer that looks like a typewriter. That totally will give the correct vibes, and it gives them something to do and opens up that whole window of things as well. But then as far as other activities that I snuck into here, I did the marbles from the new For Rent pack. That I think is such a perfect vibe for these characters and being able to like collect marbles. I put the little jar on one of the shelves in the back background. Lots of books, obviously, for them to do some reading, although the two characters don't really give the complete vibes of doing a lot of reading. Some things to play music on. In Julia's room, you do see that she has a record player, so I thought that there were a couple we could possibly pop around here and there. Again, nothing too modern in terms of like a super sleek, white, clean looking radio, but we could definitely use some of the older kind of music devices. There's also a puzzle. I think it comes from either high school years or growing together, and I do believe your Sims can actually sit down and use it. I found it in debug, but I think there is a way to get it from somewhere else, and I think your Sims can sit down and do a puzzle. I haven't used it yet so far as like gameplay personally, so I'm not really sure, but I did put that in there. Some friendship bracelets, some of those little hobby activities that you get from some of the newer packs that we've received. The fireplace on the upstairs floor will also give them a little bit of something to do, and then the woodworking table, which was huge because basically one of the big premise of the film and the bonding moment between Luca and Alberto is them trying to construct their own Vespa, and that's kind of what they bond over. So having them have the ability to play around with some wood making and have a couple of like Vespa looking bikes, I guess you would say, here and there around as kind of like their works in progress bikes was so appropriate. I put one up here so that you could have it as like general decor, like that's one that they're sort of working on, and then there's one that is down on the bottom floor of the lot so that they can actually ride it around as they would have in the film. Now, we don't have Vespas in the catalog. I don't even believe there are any in debug, even if we had them and they weren't functional, but there is one bike that I think comes from Eco Lifestyle, and it's got a lot of additional wood pieces on it that give it a different look to the traditional looking like pipe bicycles. So I felt like that worked really, really well and kind of wanted to put a couple of those around, giving the idea that they're kind of working on them, but also they have them to use as an activity. I did drop a little swing set on the bottom floor. Again, originally my idea was to make this kind of like a playground, so I wanted to have some gym equipment, even though that's not really shown in the film. I think like it's a good bonding moment between the characters again, and it's a good way to utilize this lot amongst other characters, maybe some of the other younger characters across the save. Since we're implementing this movie here, it adds a few new teen characters, and we kind of need things for teens to do. There's a lot of things that I feel like are very limiting in this game, and one of them recently to me has been hobbies and activities. You want more places for like a variety of Sims to be able to go around and do, and sometimes having dedicated areas that are very much specifically focused towards a specific age group is super important, and it's really realistic to real life. So even if you don't use the Luca characters here and you end up using some other ones, I think it'll really work out. So ultimately, I marked this as a generic lot type just so I could have it be really open to the possibility of what this place could be, but I think of it in my head as like a teen hangout spot, which isn't really a type of lot, but there you go. Altogether, I'm going to be doing 3 Luca builds. That includes the one from today, so there are 2 more coming. One of them will be the residential from the film, where most of the characters are going to be living, and then of course we'll do the creative sim, and there will be some townies from Luca as well. Not a ton of them. There are quite a few characters that are shown in the movie, and I think there are so many that I could have included, but like I've mentioned in the past, I'm really trying to limit some of the character additions in like the format of a townie. I don't think we need to have every single character ever in the Disney save, and I think it clutters everything up quite a bit. And I also just think that, like I said, Luca falls a little under the radar. It's so good if you haven't seen it. It truly made me cry like the first time I watched it. It's very beautifully animated, and it's such a shame that it came out straight to Disney Plus because I think that it would have done really well in theater. The only thing is it's a little short, and I think that may be one of the reasons why it didn't come out in theater, but there's also like the time that it came out and those sorts of things, so I'm not really sure what happened with it, but I just thought it was like a beautifully done film. And in terms of what has been coming out with Disney in the last couple of years, I can't really say that across the board. I haven't really fallen in love with like everything that they've been doing. Raya is a really great example of something that I watched that I just didn't like love. There's nothing like particularly wrong with Raya, but it wasn't great, and I think that this one was pretty great. So if you haven't seen it, definitely check it out, especially because I'm going to be building for the next couple of videos in this world, so it's kind of good for you to know what's going on. Just as a side note, if you haven't noticed already, I am aware that part of my footage is cut off, particularly on the bottom, and I super apologize for that. It will be happening for the end duration of this video, as well as the next video that I put out, at least like the first half of that. Unfortunately, my window for game recording decided to change all randomly on its own, and I didn't notice, which meant that I wasn't like recording at the right ratios, and it cut off the bottom portion of my build catalog, which is super annoying, I know, and I'm so sorry. I did fix it, and I'm gonna try to keep a better eye on it, but it is in this video, and it is going to be in the first part of the next video that comes out. I hope it doesn't bother you guys too much. After Luca, there is one final lot that I'll be doing for the world, and that means one final movie as well that I'm so excited to finally talk about when we get a little bit closer, because it is a favorite, I think, amongst people that love Disney. It is also one that kind of falls a little bit under the radar, and I don't know if everybody is kind of expecting it. There's some people that have guessed what it's going to be already. It is a very large residential build. It is also going to include a very, very large townie household. So it is a big group of things, even though we're only doing one real lot focused around it. It'll end up making a couple of videos, and then I'll be moving on to the next world. I'm going to spend some time cleaning up the save and getting everything ready to have it out on the gallery and update for a new download of the Disney save for people who want to play with Tartosa and all of the new goodies that are coming from this world. And I think I'm also going to be doing a couple of updates here and there for some of the other worlds, so there might be some newer content coming out for some worlds that I have previously done. I'm not quite sure. I have to take a look at like how the timeline's gonna lay out, but I will keep you guys updated as I know more. World voting has just started over on Patreon, so my patrons are currently voting to pick the next world for the Disney save. I kind of have some guesses at what it could possibly be just based on the last time I did world voting and what were the highest contenders. I think that a lot of those for the most part will tend to stick around and be very, very popular. There's also worlds that people talk about all the time and are really excited to do, so that tends to be the ones that get leaned towards a little bit. But I'm really, really interested in doing anything at this point. When I started Tartosa, I was excited to do this world specifically. There were some movies here that I was really, really happy to finally start. One of those being Hercules, because it's a favorite of mine. And now I'm at a point where I'm just happy to be doing pretty much anything. I don't have a particular interest in any of the themings for what is to come, and I'm happy to just do something new, start a brand new world. Could be a big world, could be a small one. I think it's going to be probably like a medium/larger size world. Those tend to be the ones that get chosen as well. If you want to be a part of that process, you can go over to Patreon and join. It has to be at Atlantean or up to vote in the polls, and basically the way I do it is kind of like a bracket list where you'll get a couple of options, you pick your favorite, and then the winner of each poll goes on to a final voting round where you get to pick overall your favorite amongst all of the high ranking choices. It'll only be going for I think the next week or so, and then we'll be moving on. I'm going to do some updates to the save like I mentioned, so it won't be straight away. But we also plan the save out in my Discord, primarily my Patreon Discord, so if you want to be a part of planning, that's a really cool way to get involved as well. To close out today's video, you can kind of see what I was mentioning earlier about making the bottom floor of the tower sort of an older teen area. It has an open archway to the outside, and it has like a tarp kind of covering it around the back. This is all stuff that was not shown in the film, but again, just to kind of like utilize this space a little bit better, and because I had such a toss-up between the ages of what to make the Luca characters, and I primarily focused on the top floor being a little bit more garnered towards like a younger teen, I did this downstairs area of like what I thought would be like an older teen. I was looking for maybe some games to play that are more focused on them, some music players, and then I did some bigger pieces of furniture and things because my thought was that it would be easier to like drag in furniture from the little arch in the back, and you don't have to bring it all the way up the stairs, so they could get like a full-size couch in here and some bigger like tires and barrels and sort of things. Not that this stuff wouldn't already be here because it is an abandoned building, so some of it definitely could have already been down here, but it just gives a little bit more to do inside the space and has some more functionality maybe for some slightly older teens. And then you can't forget the fireplace, the fire pit at the top of the tower with some seating, and I popped a little telescope up there because they do use one at Julia's house, and I thought, why not have one here as well? But it's kind of one of the more like, I think the werewolves one is supposed to be a little bit more rustic looking, so it's a little bit of an older telescope. Same vibes, ideas, like theming from the story overall. And that is the end of today's speed build. I hope you guys liked Old Portorosso Tower. Let me know what you're excited for and if you're interested in all the Luca stuff to come. And the next house is going to be Julia's home, which is pretty iconic from the film. It's probably the one that you remember the most if you've seen Luca. Also share with me all your Luca thoughts down below, because again, I just feel like it's one of those films that kind of flies under the radar. I'm curious what your thoughts are on it if you've seen it. If you'd like to support the Disney Save on Patreon, you can do so by clicking the link in my description box down below or the one at the end of the video. Thank you all so much for watching today, and I will talk to you all in the next one.